And this, which is relative to the interview that's coming up, Sean, the government's 3 waters to 5 waters is a classic move of deception by creating something extreme, then rejecting it as a means to making something else seem more palatable. Cabinet will reject the 2 new waters and opt only for the original 3 waters as the better option. No, they won't. They're going all the way. And let's talk about this, because on our opinion spot, we have republished from the Bassett Hyde website a piece by Michael Bassett, former Labor Cabinet Minister, Professor of History, and banned by the Herald for speaking his truth a year or 2 back, but still a contributing writer on the platform, Dr. Michael Bassett. And he joins us now. Michael, lovely to have you on the platform. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure.
All right. Well, Michael, we have
miserable morning here, but...
all right. Look, I've been surprised, to be honest, that the mainstream media, and it will take them a while, as it often does, have not picked up on the report back of the Select Committee on 3 waters, which is a drastic and extreme expansion of what were already contentious proposals around the management of water resources in this country. 3 waters has become 5 waters, and iwi or designated Māori groups now get a completely unmoderated policy or strategy-making power. Firstly, have we misinterpreted just how significant these changes are, do you think, Michael?
I'm not sure that you've misinterpreted anything. I've been listening to what you've been saying, and that sounds to me about it. I mean, 3 waters is first, last and foremost about tribalism. The intention is to try by Māori to get control of water and all of the powers attached thereto. But it's more than just tribalism, it's Tainui tribalism. And that is what is going on. We've actually got a minister who is Tainui, who comes from a long line of people whose prime purpose in life seems to have been to promote Tainui, and they've hit on a device presented by the 1 instance or 2 instances of problems with water, of seizing control of water for the whole of the country, and in the process managing to slide tribal rule, and more particularly Waikato Tainui tribalism into the whole thing.
Someone yesterday said it was a treaty settlement dressed up as infrastructure reform.
Well, I mean, they've had their treaty settlement, and that was back about 25 years ago, and it was full and final, a phrase that appears in treaty settlement documents, which most Māori these days want to forget.
Yeah. Look, Michael, the other problem is it is part of a well-enshrined, and it would seem to me, ever more, structured approach to an interpretation of the treaty. And I note that, the treaty is to be given effect, not to be, held in regards to water management. But essentially, this government seems to be dedicated to creating 2 governments in New Zealand, to creating what Act calls the ethno-state.
Yes. Well, I think whoever used that phrase in Act is absolutely right.
David Seymour was, yeah.
Yes. Well, there isn't any doubt about it that they are trying to structure a world where 17% of the population, with a fair wind behind them, it's not quite 17%, actually enjoy 50% of the control of New Zealand, and 100% control of water and other things, all the things that would give them total control. And so it's really not got anything to do with fixing water problems. I mean, Hastings's water problems can be fixed without an enormous problem around the country, something that ties in every single borough and, there are no longer boroughs. I got rid of them. Every single local government entity. It's not about that.
Michael, the other amazing thing to me is that these things are, or if the mainstream media were doing their job properly, would be contentious. They are already causing, I think, problems for the government and its popularity and its poll rating. But Nanaia Mahuta seems to wield an enormous amount of power in regards to this. Why do you think that is? And I would ask people to remember that you were part of a Labour government previously that had internal problems and tensions as well.
Well, this government doesn't have enough problems internally, it seems to me. What gets me is that you've got 64 bunnies who seem to be have had the wool completely pulled over their eyes. A lot of low-level lawyers and people who know almost nothing about New Zealand history and certainly nothing about Maori history. And that's a real problem. They're youngish also. And, of course, history has been taught deplorably, both at school and increasingly, sad to say, university level in the country. So you've got a caucus of bunnies, and that's the problem. They can't see what Nanaia is actually doing.
Okay. Can it be stopped? And will it be stopped when we have, the major opposition party likely to lead the government next time, which I'm just going to be honest, seems somewhat reluctant to engage in a meaningful way on these issues. And when you ask Mr. Luxon about it, if he's got time between serving fries and burgers, he says, I'm learning te reo.
Yeah, well, his problem, and I don't want to maximise it, but his real problem has been that he's been out of the country for so long prior to taking charge of Air New Zealand that he's just missed a huge amount of what has gone on. And in particular, I'm talking about the inventions that some quite malicious people have been engaged in with the treaty. I mean, the treaty that is being talked about by Waikato Tainui and by this government is not the treaty that was signed in 1840 at all. It's a whole sort of jerry-built structure that's cantilevered out over nonsense, and he doesn't know all of that because he's been missing from the country for too long.
All right. How do we solve this problem? Because it would seem to me we are locked in a forever war over interpretation of the treaty until, to be frank, someone says this document was never intended to form the basis and foundation for a functional, diverse 21st century country.
Well, I don't know how you do that. I mean, you've got to
get rid of it. You have a constitution, don't you?
Well, I wouldn't go for a constitution. You would have... New Zealand is blessed by the fact that it doesn't have too rigid a constitution. As soon as you start getting something like the American structure, oh my Lord, just imagine the debates that would go on. It'd take until 2050 to actually get the constitution into place. What you've got to have, it seems to me, is a willingness to go back to what the treaty was in what was signed in 1840, and it's quite a simple document. I mean, it's 3 clauses. I forget how many words are in it, but it's not much. And set aside all of the nonsense that has been structured about partnership and so on, all of which is jerry-built and it deliberately misleads you over what a 1987 Court of Appeal finding had in it. And you've got to get a government that is strong enough to, as David Seymour seems to have said, to reject any notion of an ethnocentric state.
I guess, though, too, we get the narrative very strongly, and particularly from our legacy media, Michael, that this is the price that the descendants of evil white colonisers have to pay for the sins of their forefathers.
Oh, what a pile of hogswash. Colonisation, yes, it brought some big changes to Maori society, but don't forget, they couldn't read and write. They didn't have a legal system. They fought each other deaf, dumb and blind. During the musket wars of the 1820s and 30s, Maori actually killed 1/3 of their entire population. That point isn't mentioned. And,
imagine that's not in the new school history syllabus either, is it?
No, but it's all absolutely demonstrable. I mean, we have all the evidence for it. And anybody listening, just get a copy of Ron Crosby's Musket Wars, the Musket Wars. But if you don't even want to do that, have a look at Michael King's History of New Zealand, Keith Sinclair's History of New Zealand. I mean, it's all there in black and white. What happened with colonisation, to come back to your original point, was that a legal system emerged slowly. Yes, a lot of land was grabbed, particularly after the wars in the 1860s. And yes, some things like Parihaka are stains on colonisation. But having said that, the stains on colonisation that Maori wrought upon themselves are certainly huge by comparison.
Michael, it is always...
And of course, if you think to an educational system, I mean, what Maori actually used to encourage teachers to strap kids to stop them being taught in Maori in the 1860s and 70s and 80s. The parents wanted their kids to learn English, the language of colonisation.
Yeah. Michael, do you think Five Waters, as we're now calling it, can be turned around?
Well, yes, it can, if the Labour caucus would only read the flaming thing and read a bit of history and realise what is happening. Is that likely to happen? No, sadly. But the sooner the Labour Party, the current Labour government, is put out to grass, the better it'll be for all of us.
That's a good spot to end on. Always good talking to you, Dr. Bassett. I thank you very much indeed for your time this morning and your excellent column, which we've republished on the Platform Opinion site, and I encourage people to get along and read. That is Dr. Michael Bassett, former Labour Cabinet Minister, Professor of History, writer and thinker and banned by the Herald. Herald editor says we'll never publish what he says again. Well, that's open, tolerant and free, isn't it? Incredibly. Yet you publish Chanel Lal. I'm not calling on Chanel to be cancelled. I'm just calling on him to think more and not be such an idiot.